From a King to a God is the latest release from Griselda member Conway the Machine. 2020 has been a big year for Griselda and specifically Conway the Machine, with this album being his third release of the year already. Personally, I have been relatively late to Griselda and their musical output, but the projects that I've heard this year and this specific Conway project makes me wish that I'd kind of got in there a bit earlier. Now, even with my limited knowledge of Conway and Griselda's music, again, I've only heard a handful of projects. This new one feels like something different, something a bit out of the ordinary for Conway the Machine. Earlier this year, he dropped Lulu, which was his collaborative project with the legendary Alchemist. That was a kind of mini album EP. I think it was only 7 or 8 songs. It was very grimy and dark, as you'd expect. But it was pretty much just that. It was just straight up raps and beats, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really solid project. The West Side Gun album, Pray for Paris, which dropped maybe, 3, 4, 5 months ago now. Again, that was a very dark, gritty, grimy affair. It was star-studded. There were features from Freddie Gibbs, Tyler the Creator, Joey Badass, etc., etc., etc. Again, it had that same kind of aesthetic as the Conway project, but with a distinct experimental flair to it as well. I think one of the features, I think it was the last song, the second to last song, was a tap dancer. This new Conway the Machine project feels, to my ear at least, a bit more epic and grand, and something that might be geared towards more of a larger audience. Not to say that it's just commercial just for the sake of being commercialized. All of the core elements that make Conway the Machine are still there, but it does sound like something that would be more accessible to someone who isn't previously familiar with his music. The song Fear of God, I think, is a great example of marrying these two elements, marrying the dark, grimy aesthetic of Conway's music with a bit more of a commercial appeal. The song Fear of God is, of course, produced by Hit Boy, who is responsible for some of the biggest and best hip-hop bangers over the last 10 years. Conway still maintains his trademark lyricism and mannerisms, and stakes his claim to being one of the premier rapping artists today. He spits his verses over what sounds like a kind of traditional, straightforward, classic hip-hop beat, but as Hit Boy has done, especially on the last Nas album, which dropped, I think, about a month ago, he brings in these massive, strange, growling synths that make it sound just a bit more modern. And since it's Hit Boy, the percussion elements are very, very clean, and they drive pretty much the entire song. And I think that is what makes this a marriage of two things. You can still bop your head to the beat, but also pay attention and listen to the bars that Conway is saying. The album itself opens very epically with the song From King. It begins with a spoken word excerpt from the British philosopher Alan Watts. The entire instrumental of this opening track sounds like the bridge to a 1970s epic progressive rock song with its very, very loud, powerful electronic guitar chords with its spaced out kind of loose percussion elements as well. Conway comes through with his typically very vivid and descriptive language. He paints a very clear picture of the world he inhabits, and it makes it sound all the more epic and important when it's over a beat like this. What I do really appreciate and admire about this album, and about Conway specifically, is that while he's painting these very, very dark and violent pictures of his upbringing and the world he knew, he isn't afraid to just let his emotions take the lead when it's appropriate. And he does that amazingly on the song Forever Dropping Tears. The instrumental from Eric Sermon is amazing. I think it's one of the best on the album. It teases the emotion of the song and the lyrical content of the song that is to come, with its very dreary guitar lines and dramatic vocal samples in the background. Conway dedicates this entire song to a close friend who is no longer with us, and he paints a very, very image-provoking story of the very close bond that these two people had. And it's not just him just trying to falsely elicit some emotion from the listener just because someone has passed away. He has crafted a story. It's not just a set of events. It's an expert display of storytelling, and that's what makes you engage with the story and what makes you feel empathy for Conway. What he does is he builds up a very, very real and relatable human friendship with him and this person before detailing just how randomly his life was taken away. It was taken away in a car crash. I think it's such a honest, compelling, and relatively straightforward exploration of the themes of friendship and loss and grief. And I think it's one of the most emotionally engaging hip-hop songs I've heard all year. Aside from this is still a relatively diverse album as well. You do get that straightforward, straight up, dark, gloomy, grimy New York hip-hop sound, perfectly exemplified by the song Lemon. The beat to this song is kind of indescribable. It sounds like the musical equivalent of Intimidation and Unease, but in the best possible way. There's this strange, murky, lo-fi synth that just rests there throughout pretty much the entire beat. It's intercut by this sparkling, twinkling piano little melody and what sounds like a guitar being tuned upwards or downwards. I forget. Also, Conway's kind of ridiculous but infectious lemon squeeze hook is amazing to me, and I'm not quite sure why. Also, this may be one of, if not the strongest displays of just pure lyricism on the entire album. I think my favorite bar from Conway on this is where he says, "If it's an issue, trust, I'm coming out to get you in person with the extender throwing at you till I flip your Suburban." Just the idea of rhyming person and Suburban is amazing to me. What makes this song extra special though is a feature from Wu-Tang Clan member Method Man, my personal favorite member of the Wu-Tang Clan, and for me it makes for one of the best features I've heard all year. He opens his verse with this insane CNN rhyme scheme before he just goes to just completely destroy every single bar of this verse. His trademark rough, grimy drawl and intricately strung together bars are all there as usual, with just an expert level of delivery and flow. Of course, as this is a Griselda release, a Griselda project, Benny the Butcher and Westside Gunn make their customary appearance on the song Spurs 3. Unfortunately, just for me, just personally to my ear, this song is just a bit too loose and a bit awkwardly strung together for my liking. I do appreciate the layers just to the beat alone and the different elements coming together, but I don't think they mesh as seamlessly as I would like to. I think I did have high hopes for this song because the song on the Pray for Paris album, which featured all three artists, which was George Bondo, I believe, was one of the standouts on that album. The bars are there, of course. The bars are still stellar, but it's just a bit clunky, and the structure of the beat doesn't fit right for me personally. I think maybe the biggest surprise for me on this album was the song Anza, and that's because it was produced by Murder Beats. Of course, Murder Beats is known for producing for some of the biggest artists in the world of hip-hop. He's produced for Drake, Nicki Minaj, Travis Scott, Migos, Gucci Mane, 6ix9ine, the list just goes on and on and on. And this is a notably more commercial sound for Conway. Thankfully, what Murder Beats has done, and what I imagine is it feels like this is not just a generic Murder Beats beat, but he's made it specifically for Conway the Machine. He's married elements of what makes Conway's music and what makes a Murder Beats beat a Murder Beats beat. Murder Beats isn't the only big name producer to appear on this album as well. There's features from DJ Premier, Hit Boy, The Alchemist, as well as Murder Beats himself. For me, all of these elements make for a very diverse, engaging, and surprisingly replay-heavy album as well. It's a project like this that I can imagine bridging the gap between Griselda and Conway the Machine's world and the more commercial world. Even if it is, again, I have a limited knowledge of Griselda's output. I still have to go back and listen to quite a lot. But from the few projects I've heard, it is significantly more commercial, but I think it's still just as strong as almost anything I've heard thus far. Again, it's the consistency. Every project that I've heard out of the Griselda camp has been consistently very, very solid. I think the biggest thing that Conway the Machine has done with this album is that he's made something that's still authentically him, where he can tell these very, very honest and sometimes dark stories, but he's brought in a bit more of a commercial appeal, as well as distinguishing himself from the other members of Griselda. Those are my thoughts on the album. What did you guys think of the album? Make sure to leave a comment down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and dong the bell. And I will see you next time.